United States Air Force, built by North American Aviation, the same company that built the P-51 Mustang, the airplane many consider to be the best fighter of all time. North American launched the F-86 Sabre jet. Swept wings over Korea with a General Electric J-47 turbojet engine that generated about 5,200 pounds of thrust. It enabled this aircraft to fly at speeds in excess of 670 miles per hour. As a matter of fact, those of you who may remember that the first person to break the sound barrier was Chuck Yeager in October of 1947. That was in a rocket-powered plane that was designed to do only that mission. But an F-86 Sabre jet in a shallow dive actually was also able to break the sound barrier. It was later that another North American aviation airplane, the F-100 Super Sabre, actually the first jet to break the sound barrier in level flight. But let me tell you about what this airplane did during the Korean War between 1950 and 1953. At the beginning of that conflict, the Russians were supplying the North Korean Air Force with swept-wing MiG-15 jet fighters. They were extremely maneuverable and were able to outrun, outclimb, outperform, and with their cannons outshoot the Americans' first aircraft to see combat, and that was the F-80 Shooting Star, a straight-wing jet. It was fast for its day. It remains the fastest straight-wing fighter to this day. But, single-engine straight-wing fighter jet, but it was no match for the MiGs. A 36-degree sweepback on the wing, and an aircraft that was rushed into production and into combat and service for the United States Air Force. The F-86 Sabre jet was then, with its 650 caliber machine guns, a very, very good adversary to the Russian-built MiGs that were often flown not by North Korean pilots during the Korean War, but by seasoned Russian pilots. But in that Korean War, we had a lot of American pilots who were combat veterans of World War II, having flown piston-engine fighters during that war. In the hands of those capable American pilots, the F-86 Sabre jet racked up a 10-to-1 victory ratio. The initial time of the F-86 Sabre jet, nearly 7,700 feet per minute. That's over a mile a minute. And at the controls today is a gentleman who is a very, very well-known pilot in our industry. His name is Paul Wood. He's the founder of the Warbird Heritage Foundation. He started that organization in 2003, and his interest in aviation began as a young kid, has continued on to this day. Even though he is not a military pilot, he is flying this jet and many other warbirds that were used during the military in World War II in Korea. He holds an airline transport pilot and certified flight instructor certificates. He's got over 5,000 hours of flight time, including 1,000 in military-type jets. He's been a member of the United States Navy Legacy Flight Program for several years. He's got a Level 2 Aerobatic Competency Certificate, and besides flying the Foundation Warbirds, he owns a Cessna Citation CJ-1 and an Aviat A1B Husky, a very small, kind of bush plane, if you will, single-engine, high wing, couple of seats. But he is an incredibly talented pilot. In addition, he does formation flying with a group called the Hoppers, and he's a co-founder and managing director at a leading private equity investment firm, and he and his family live in Lake Forest, Illinois. Paul Wood, the pilot, the aircraft, the F-86 Sabre jet. Look at the roll rate of this airplane. to many Americans at the time was the first MiGs were flown by top Soviet pilots, and only later when Chinese and North Korean pilots took over did the better training of the U.S. pilots prove influential. As the Sabre gained the upper hand, depending on whose history book you read, a 10-to-1 victory ratio, some claim as high as 15-to-1. In other words, 15 Soviet MiGs shot down for every one American aircraft that was shot down. Danny Clisham, Paul Woods up there, welcome back. I hope you had a great ride in the right beam
We
flyer.
had Paul Woods, this pilot, flying for you now, right in our sights. We could have waxed him, so but we like him too much. Upside down goes Paul Woods, the rough guy, upside down. Remember what they used to call the Sabre back in the Korean War?
No, Danny, what was that?
The Sabre was the world's leading distributor of MiG parts. They left them all over the place in air-to-air combat.
Scattered them all over the place, right? Waxed them, big time.
Well, you talked about Paul Wood, this airplane, used by so many nations and built way past 9,800 plus in all of the variants in all of the countries from around the world. Swept wing, that is a great example of it right there. That was new, it was magic, and as Rob told you, it came from the Germans. It was divided between the spoils, divided between the Soviets and the Americans as we divided up their aeronautical information and their talent as well to help us with our space program. But swept wing was revolutionary compared to a straight wing because it gave you speed. That and a couple of other concepts on the airplane that we got from the Germans, that the Russians got from the Germans, led to the MiG-15 swept wing aircraft with that standard sweep of about 35 to 36 degrees. And that was going to be the key because it reduced the onset of buffet boundary. It gave you speed. Flying this beautiful silver airplane, loud, shiny, and fast is the key, is a great pilot who can fly so many aircraft. His name is Paul Wood, demonstrating the Korean aircraft. Now, in the Korean War, there were 40 American nations. 39 of them flew aircraft like this one. The only other one that wasn't an F-86 of those 40 was the only Navy ace, who, by the way, was the only piston-powered ace, flying a Corsair like Dave Falk is going to fly later, Lieutenant Guy Balderon. He got 5 of the enemy's aircraft in his night fighter version of the Corsair, which, by the way, was still being manufactured in the Korean War. Paul Wood has center stage showing you the great performance. Look at that, a vertical roll and a continued vertical roll, still utilizing that sky and tapping it off on top. That was a beautiful victory roll done to the vertical.
With that, demonstrating that incredible climb rate of about 1.5 miles a minute initially. All right, watch him as he dives back in. Reaching those incredible speeds. Now, what you might be seeing when he turns the smoke off is some smoke that actually exists from the engine itself. And that was something that later on, that was really a challenge because it really gave away the position of the jets as they were inbound, the dark smoke coming from the exhaust. And technology progressed, and they were able to more efficiently burn the fuel, so the engines became more smokeless, much more difficult to see, giving those who didn't show a lot of smoke a significant advantage in aerial combat. Extremely maneuverable, as Danny told you, and he even had something called a leading edge slat that dropped automatically to help with slow speed maneuvering. There was such technology in those days between the 1940s and the 1960s when the testing and different aircraft were being worked on and flown and crashed and developed, and people giving their lives to further the technology to build aircraft that would defend our freedom to this day.
That's right, and some of those concepts are still being used, one of them being the swept wing design in our current and modern fighters. Paul's coming around. This in a slow-speed environment is where those leading-edge devices will pop out to give him slow-speed capability. Always like to say something about the great skill of Paul Wood. Man, he can fly a jet, he can fly a piston-powered airplane. Whatever he puts his hands on, he does a magnificent job. You'll see, too, that while World War II had a tremendous amount of tailwheel aircraft, it was not exclusive to World War II. But after that, we were going to put the third gear up at the nose for a lot of different reasons. One is forward visibility on the ground. Also, crosswind capabilities were greatly enhanced with the nose wheel versus the tail wheel.
One of the things we see in this, we don't see on this